Hello, welcome back to my channel. My name is Kelsey and today we have a little visitor. As you will watch over the course of this video, my son got progressively sicker and sicker, and today he is fighting off the last bits of his fever. So obviously he wants to be with mommy, and I only have like this time to record my intro and outro, so bear with me please. But let's talk about what this vlog actually is about, which is Stephen Graham Jones. So last year I think I read The Last Final Girl, I think it was, by Stephen Graham Jones, and I really enjoyed my experience. This year I read Mapping the Interior by him, and I really liked that one as well. So then I decided, what better way to end October than do a taste test of what I think will likely be an auto-buy horror author for me. So in this vlog, you will see me read The Only Good Indians, My Heart is a Chainsaw, and one of his newer 2025 releases, The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. I just wanted to take a moment here to just explain a vocabulary choice in this vlog. In Canada, we refer to the Indigenous people as Indigenous or Aboriginal, but Stephen Graham Jones is from still America, but the USA part, where Indigenous people are referred to or prefer to be called, according to the internet, Native Americans. So because in the works that he's written and the description for these books and whatnot, Native American is the term used. So I just want you to know that that is the vocabulary choice that I used in this vlog. So just know that if you are Canadian, when I am speaking about the Native American communities and peoples, I'm referring to the Aboriginal and Indigenous. So I just wanted to make that clear because obviously we are occupying stolen land and the least we could do is use the appropriate terminology. So now that that's out of the way, I hope you enjoy this vlog. So I will take you back to Kelsey a couple of days ago when I started this vlog, and we'll meet back at the end. Hello, hopefully there is a better introduction, which I know there will be. So hi, past or future Kelsey rather. I am now 100 pages into The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones, and I'm really loving it. Essentially, this book is sort of like a revenge narrative. The Only Good Indians follows four American Indian men after a disturbing event from their youth puts them in a desperate struggle for their lives. Tracked by an entity bent on revenge, these childhood friends are helpless as the culture and traditions they left behind catch up to them in a violent and vengeful way. So essentially, we don't know much as of like right now at this point, but we're sort of gathering that an elk that they had shot when they were young is slowly coming back to haunt them because the elk was pregnant, and the elk is coming back now 10 years later to enact some revenge on them. And we're starting off with Lewis because he was the one I think that had the most pity probably for the elk, so he's the one being haunted first. So you slowly see as he's descending into like paranoia, a lot of paranoia. I'm loving this. I really do love it. I love the way that Stephen Graham Jones, my son is doing something. So the way that Stephen Graham Jones writes is as though he's like telling the story orally, which is a tradition like dating back centuries. And specifically the way that Native elders often tell stories and pass on their knowledge through generations. And so even though this book is written and in a physical form, the way that Lewis, the main character, and thus Stephen Graham Jones is telling the story is as though we are listening to it as an oral like warning of revenge. I'm really enjoying like that aspect of the writing style. I think it's really interesting and really is true to the type of story that Stephen Graham Jones is telling. He's obviously telling a story that is so true to like a Native American experience. The way in which he's telling the story also adds to the plot of the story, if you get what I mean. The paranoia that Lewis is feeling right now is just beginning to start. And this last chapter, I really liked because you can see that he's like slowly not being able to trust people. He's starting to understand why the elk is possibly haunting them, if the elk is haunting them, right? Because it's still a story of like paranoia at the end of the day, as most revenge stories are. So yeah, I'm really liking it. I'm hoping to get at least another 100 pages in today. I say this every time. I could possibly finish it, but I'm not going to get too excited. I'm really happy that I am enjoying it because now that we're really diving into this and seeing if I can solidify him as a favorite author, I'm like very excited about this project. So I'm going to continue listening to this. I'm going to figure out what the hell my son is doing. He's being suspicious. And then I'm going to make him like his lunch, probably like pita bread with hummus and stuff. And then we'll get back to an update probably later. Hello, so I'm holding you up against my laptop. I'm trying to do this really quick update because my son is getting restless. It's almost time for his bed. He's staring at me directly from his jumper. I am now entering the last bit of the novel, so I'm about a page, I think 201. So much has happened. We ended the first part with Lewis succumbing to his paranoia, which was at the same time grotesque but also very sad because we're like led to believe that this is all paranoia from him, right? And then the second part opens up with more answers sort of to like Lewis's story, but now we're following the two other men that he was with that night when they killed the elk, Cassidy and Gabe. And we're following their story as they are oblivious to a very present haunting. So that's all I'll really say about the plot because I do think that part of what I'm enjoying about this book is the mystery behind the haunting that they're experiencing and how oblivious so far we still have quite a bit left in like this part that Gabe and Cassidy have been, considering that they kind of know that what happened with Lewis is not particularly normal. So I think that their characterization is really interesting because they have not spoken to Lewis in 10 years. So they don't really know him anymore, which I think is a really interesting tactic that Stephen Graham Jones included because they know him enough to know that this is a weird behavior, but not enough to be like, this is concerning. We should be concerned. Something's happening. I'm really, 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 really loving this a lot, honestly. I can see myself ending this. Maybe I'm like, look. I'm gonna try tonight. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. I definitely don't want to put this book down unless I have to. So take from that what you will. I'm definitely going to help my baby go to sleep. He has been feeling really sick lately. Part of this is due because he started daycare, obviously, and like germs are being intermingled with one another that he's never experienced before. And then part of it is he's also teething. So even at night when he does eventually fall asleep, he wakes up more frequently because he's in pain as well. He doesn't like want to wake up. He just happens to. We'll see what happens. We'll see where the night takes us. But my goal is to finish The Only Good Indian. So we'll see how we manage to do that. Okay. It's time for an update on The Only Good Indians. I finished this last night while putting my son to sleep. He's been very, very, very sick. So I was just listening to the audiobook while holding him. It was the only way to get him to pretty much sleep last night. This kept me entertained and awake at least. And I gave it a 4.5 stars. I'm so happy about this rating because I really, really did love this. And I think it's like almost perfect. I just found, like I mentioned, the beginning portion of the novel to be a tad confusing, but I think Jones really does an excellent job at like reorienting you into the story and how it is progressing that I almost forgot how confused I was at the beginning of the book. Like I said, the novel is written as though it is being told orally, which really settles itself into the Native American tradition of telling stories. It's also broken into like 3 different sections, which I found to be like pretty genius and kept me extremely tense and engaged until the final ride at the end. From about 50 pages in. So after that initial confusing portion, I was completely hooked. But I definitely think you do have to push past that, especially if you're not used to the way that Stephen Graham Jones writes. Once you move past that, you're pretty much golden. I think the story really solidifies itself, remains interesting, and it becomes such like a fantastic reading experience. So 4.5 stars, absolutely love this, which made me so much more excited to dive into the next book, which I have started, but I'm only like 20 pages in. My Heart is a Chainsaw. This is a well-beloved book on BookTube specifically, or at least the horror booktubers that I watch. If I really like The Only Good Indians, I can't see why I won't like My Heart is a Chainsaw, which really bodes well because I'm very, very into Stephen Graham Jones writing right now. This is about a young girl named Jade Daniels who is a huge slasher fan. She lives pretty close to Camp Blood, which was home to a massacre 50 years beforehand. And the summer that this book is taking place, a rich development is being carved out of the forest surrounding it. And because of this gentrification, a slasher has also been dug up, and Jade kind of takes it upon herself to solve the mystery. I'm very, very into this. I love slashers. Slashers is my favorite horror genre, my preferred because I hate demonic entities. So I only really watch slashers, and I find like slashers always really have an interesting commentary on like societal expectations of whatever area that they are writing about. So I'm very, very interested in this. Like I said, I'm not far in, so I don't really have any substantial thoughts right now, but I just wanted to let you know that I'm reading it. So I'm going to clean up my house a little bit, probably give my kid a fruit smoothie, and listen to this as we move forward throughout the day. Hello. So I'm coming to you very excitedly, 135 pages into My Heart is a Chainsaw, to say that I'm loving it. Again, we have such an engaging way of telling a story. We have Jade's perspective in like a present timeline as she obsessively starts to wonder if she is living in a slasher movie. There is a community being built on Native American land. A new girl starts who is what Jade deems as a perfect final girl. So she is transfixed with the idea that they will be living in a slasher movie because she is obsessed with slashers. That would be like my one complaint about the book, is how obsessed Jade is with slashers. She brings it up constantly, but I think it's working to solidify Jade as not necessarily an unreliable narrator, but definitely someone who is transfixed in a sort of fantasy. Granted, it is a slasher film. It's not like a typical fantasy novel, but it's definitely something that comforts her in a way. So I think we are sort of being led to not necessarily mistrust Jade, but definitely question her motives for the way she sees and perceives things. Coinciding with each individual chapter, we have pages written by Jade herself as like an extracurricular historical paper where she's talking about the history of slashers and the slasher genre and how it correlates to the goings on of their neighborhood. Honestly, really, really loving this. I definitely think it is more fun probably than the Only Good Indians, simply because I think it's working as a slasher, and slashers tend to be, if you like them, a more fun genre of horror. In the two books I've read from Stephen Graham Jones, we have two different writing styles, which I think is really interesting and working for the story that he's trying to tell in each individual book. In both books, we have talk about elks, symbolism of elks, but also the fear of elks. So I think that that's really interesting. Just something I noted and maybe wouldn't have noticed if I didn't read The Only Good Indians before this, but elk as working as a symbolism within both books. I'm going to continue listening to this. I have nothing really to do today. My son is just crawling around, rolling around on the floor. I'm trying to like encourage him to be independent and crawl on the floor because the daycare educators mentioned that they need to be able to like leave him on the floor if they have to take care of another child or do something. So I want him to feel like comfortable being independent because obviously he's the firstborn of two firstborns. So he is very spoiled and constantly in people's arms. So I'm trying to like let him gain his independence. The fact that he's starting to crawl makes him feel more confident, I think, in his independence. So that's why I'm trying not to like be on top of him at all times and like really just let him explore. I finished cleaning our house a little bit today. I'm waiting for some meat to defrost so I can start cooking. So really I have nothing to do but listen to this, which I shall. Hello, so I'm going to be really whispering because my son is asleep for the night. I really, really don't want to wake him up because, like I mentioned, he's also still feeling a little sick. So staying asleep has been a little hard for him these past few days. So I want to prevent any sort of abrupt awakening. But this should be a pretty quick update because I am more than halfway through My Heart is a Chainsaw. I'm at page 247, so I have about 150 pages left, give or take. I'm really, really still enjoying this. The plot is really ramping up. There have been murders. Our proclaimed final girl by Jade has seen the murders. There's still this underlying idea that possibly Jade is making all of this up, or rather is hopeful that a serial killer is on the loose because she is obsessed with slasher movies. We're still reading from quite an unreliable narrator, at least to the people in the town over us. There's also a really interesting discussion on gentrification happening right now. It's not necessarily the most in depth, but at least this is the way I'm reading it. I'm taking the gentrification to be at minimum a red herring, implying that we should be looking at the people who are gentrifying Indian Lake and the forest town that surrounds it. Obviously, it is being taken over by rich white men often. They are the ones not only gentrifying neighborhoods, but also committing violence. So I'm guessing that at least we're supposed to be observing these men or being suspicious of them. That is the takeaway I'm taking so far about this part. Nobody believes Jade. They do think that she's going through something, or at least something has happened to her in her life. And we are subtly starting to have conversations about gentrification and the role of white men in gentrifying areas. The three founders of the Vega town, the like high-end mansion town in the forest are willing to speak pretty highly about the surrounding area, the city that they're moving into, and are offering to pay for future graduates from here on out tuition to college. So obviously Jade is like, well, I don't want to be suspicious of them now. Like they seem like good guys. And I think that it's going to come around to something like that, or the book is just making me look at them suspiciously. I don't know. I'm really enjoying that mystery. I'm excited to see what it entails. And also, this is a series. There are 2 more books in this trilogy. So that makes me really interested because it's going along a like slasher franchise, which is fun and like a nod, I guess, to the genre by Stephen Graham Jones. But then also like what could possibly happen at the end of this to lead to 2 follow-ups. So I'm really excited about that. So I'm going to read the rest of this and I will come update you. I'm obviously not going to finish it tonight just because it is almost 11, but I will read as much as I can before I need to go to sleep, and I will likely finish this tomorrow. Hello, so we have a couple of updates. Last night I did in fact finish My Heart is a Chainsaw, and as I think this vlog is really going, I loved it. This was so fun, as most slashers I think personally are. I love, now that I've read multiple books by Stephen Graham Jones at this point, I love the way he puts us in the minds of our main characters. A lot of them are long-winded over explainers, and I relate, and I'm just loving them more and more with like every single book. I think he's doing an excellent job at really characterizing them, and like I said, putting us in the mind of them that we feel connected to them. The way Jones used the like slasher genre to subtly explain the trauma of our main character, as well as the trauma of our ultimate like villain of the book, was so well done. I did not find Jade's like obsession slash love for slashers to be annoying in any way, although I do see the criticism. I understand that some people would be annoyed by that because she does often reference them in awkward and, as I said, long-winded ways. And that being said, if we're talking about like the other criticisms of this book, I don't necessarily think you need to be well versed in slashers specifically to enjoy this book. Like most of the lore that was dropped in this book about slashers, I personally found to be like pretty well known culturally, that I never felt lost. Again, I have watched my fair share of slashers, not every single one, and not the like classic ones either. So I felt like it was pretty understandable. I think if you know anything about any slashers from the 80s and 90s, you'll be fine. The one thing I will say that was a little bit confusing was the final massacre at the end of the novel. I had to re-listen to it several times, and then I read a like Reddit post following it just to make sure I was truly understanding it, because I wasn't expecting something that I won't mention due to spoilers, but something happens and I wasn't expecting the book to go that way. So I wanted to make sure like I was fully understanding what was happening, because up until that point, the book wouldn't have led me to believe that this would happen. I don't know if you get what I'm saying. If you've read it, you get it. Overall, though, I had such a fun time with this that I'm immediately going to buy the sequels to this book. Like, I need to know the rest of Jade's story. I absolutely love this. I gave it 4 stars just due to the fact that the ending was so confusing. But I think upon a reread, like, I would just eat this the fuck up. Now we're going to move into the last book for this vlog. I did read a bit last night, but I'm not going to talk about it too much because I didn't get to like a solid third, which is where I like to update people in the books. And I wasn't able to do so because my son had a fever last night. He's doing much better this morning. If I didn't take the temperature myself, I would think he was faking it. He's in such a good mood. Everything other than the temperature of his body, he's perfect. We have to wait 24 hours before we can make any decisions like medically, like if we have to go to the doctor or whatever. So I just kept him home from daycare today. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. I did start the Buffalo Hunter x Hunter last night. It's more like a historical text in the way that like Frankenstein is kind of, and it's very akin to Frankenstein. It's basically a story within a story within a story. Oh, my order from Super C is almost here, so I have to hurry up. So I have the story of this Native American man named Goodstab who is on like an expedition, being told to a Lutheran pastor that will like unveil a slow massacre of 217 dead in the snow. And then that is transcribed into a journal that is found in 2012, so 100 years later, by the descendant of the Lutheran priest. That's what I gather right now for the synopsis. So because my grocery order is almost here, I will let you go. I'm going to read probably another like 50 pages or so, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about my first thoughts of the book. choose this angle. I just don't feel like really setting up the tripod because my son is running around everywhere. And because he's been feeling sick, I obviously want to encourage him to like play normally just because it means that he's like healing and he's on the right track for healing. So I want to encourage that behavior and I don't want to put obstacles in the way for him to like smash down. But I have gotten about 150 pages into the Buffalo Hunter. I think what's really interesting is that I feel the same about this book as I did every other Stephen Graham Jones, where I find the beginning third of the novel to be a little bit confusing and it's hard to get into the book fully because Stephen Graham Jones really puts you in the mind of the main characters. With this book specifically, you're entering the perspective of a perspective of a perspective. You have to not only get in the mind of Goodstab, but you also have to get in mind of the preacher. And then you also have to get into the mind of the preacher's descendant, who we have not seen since the first chapter. But I feel like, why set it that way if she's not going to be important, you know? So we have all of that, and we have Goodstab recounting his transformation into this being to the preacher. And it's very, I think I mentioned this like in my brief update before, very akin to Frankenstein. And I really, really like how much Frankenstein adjacent things I've been reading recently. And I don't mean it obviously in the sense that it is a Frankenstein monster, because it is more closer to like a vampiric idea, but it's more in regards to like the format that Stephen Graham Jones has chosen to tell the story, which is that a monster is coming to life and then recounting his troubles to another person, specifically in this case a preacher, in order to like annul his sins or something of that nature, which I think is really interesting because obviously with the influx of colonization, the Native Americans were exposed to Catholic Christian religions. I'm wondering why this man who didn't really go to this pastor's church, right, has chosen to do so in order to do what? Look for forgiveness. That's an interesting, I think, discussion that Stephen Graham Jones can possibly tackle in the book. Another thing I'll say about my first impressions, this is the third Stephen Graham Jones book I've read for this blog, and it's the third time that the format of the book or the way that he chooses to tell the story is different. They're all from a like, I guess, first person adjacent type of narrative style, very like omnipresent in a sense. So it really goes with like a traditional like oral telling of a story, but it's always different ways of doing so. So with The Only Good Indians, it's spoken to as such, where like characters in the present interrupt narratives from the past. In My Heart is a Chainsaw, we have Jade in this overabundance of storytelling and overindulging her passions and the way that she is navigating this plot. And then this one is a story within a story within a story, which is an additional layering of the oral tradition of telling stories. I think it's just fascinating. It's 3 books I've read from him that are completely different from one another, not just in terms of their plot, but also within the way that Stephen Graham Jones chooses to tell this story. Very fascinated by this difference in his writing style. I think it takes skill to be a different writer in, at least this is 3 separate books that came relatively a year after one another and are still completely different, I think is an attest to his writing talent. This one I think is the most confusing because it has the most historical way of speaking, because it is trying to remind us of like a Gothic writing style, and Gothic writing often takes me a bit longer to get into just because it is so vastly different from like what I'm used to reading. So right now it's about the time that I will start making supper. We're going to make soup tonight, obviously, because we are still all sick. That's the scenario, the situation right now. I will listen to it while I prepare the broth, and I'll see you guys later. Hello! We are now on the absolute final day that I can record clips for this video, finish the book before I can get it up. I'm hoping Saturday, but we're going to see. Tomorrow's Halloween, and it's like really important that my son has a proper like Halloween, that he dresses up and stuff. Yesterday was probably the worst of his fever. I think it really broke around supper time. Like he was very lethargic and like sweating and very red. And now he's feeling, I think, a lot yeah, I think he's feeling a lot better. So I'm really happy about that because that means he could probably go to daycare tomorrow. Of course, depending how he feels. I have about 150 pages left into the Buffalo Hunter. I think I can get it done in about 2 hours. I was going to talk about like where we were in the plot, but I find this book to be quite difficult in regards to the plot because, as I've mentioned, it's a story within a story within a story. So really, we're just hearing very like self-introspective feelings and thoughts about our two main characters. So Goodstab is really talking about returning to his community, seeing that elders that he has grown up with are passing away as time obviously moves on for him, that they've been searching for him, and he is essentially a vampire, right? So he's draining people of their blood so that he can continue to live. And so I think this is really interesting because there is still this overarching death of 217 Blackfeet dead in the snow. I'm wondering if he's going to get blamed for that. We also have these confessions being told to the Lutherian priest, who Goodstab refers to as three persons. And I find him to be a really interesting character because obviously, like, he reminds me a lot of the priest in the Exorcist book, because they are both these like hesitant figures who obviously have an ideology and a belief system, transmitting the word of the Lord to people and being there for people who want to do confessionals and find like the Holy Spirit, I guess. I don't know how it works for Lutherans, okay? Give me grace, if I don't know the ins and outs of other Christianities. That's his belief system and that's his role in life. And people come to him when they have like mysterious deaths and stuff like that, because obviously he's able to like absolve the body so that their spirit may pass on. But also people are aware that this Native American man is coming to his parish and they are suspicious of him. There's obviously a commentary there about the distrust of outsiders, specifically the distrust of people of color. So there's a lot of discussions there that's going on, not just obviously that Goodstab is a vampire. And I'm really enjoying it. Like I said, I think Stephen Graham Jones's most strongest suit is the fact that he is able to create such distinct voices for each of his individual characters. No character that I've read from in each of these books feels the same to me. They all feel extremely different, which is, I just need to applaud that, because like I don't think I'll be forgetting any of these books because they are so distinct. So that's my update for now. Like I said, the only thing we have to do today is make sure my son is chill. We have to move the car outside. I can't forget to do that because I parked on the street that's getting clean today and I don't feel like leaving the house because it's raining. But maybe we'll go do something just so there's an excuse to like leave and then come back in an hour maybe and read this book. And those are my only tasks for the day besides like feeding us both. I will leave you here and I will finish this book and we will come back together. Hello, welcome back to the end of the vlog. And let's get into my final thoughts about The Buffalo Hunter Hunter. So I would argue straight out of the gate that this is one of Jones's like better books. And I say that in quotations because I think that this is like a very, very big labor of love in a way. It's hard to call this love when he's focusing on the deaths of a Native community in this book and the horrors of succumbing to like colonial expectations. But you can definitely tell that this took research and this was a lot of work. His writing in this one I found to be really masterful. I think I mentioned this, but it reminds me very fondly of like Frankenstein or Dracula, very much stories within stories within stories. And I found it to really conclude quite beautifully. The stories all came together and it marked it really as a tale of revenge for those wronged during this time period. It is also heavily inspired by, based on the Maria's massacre, which only furthers Jones's, I think, purpose to highlight this moment in America's like ugly history just in general, but then cementing the readers themselves within this time period. It felt real because it was real. And I mentioned this throughout my other clips, but Jones really made each individual main character feel important and unique. There's 3 different stories with 3 different voices that all felt extremely distinct. I do have like one slight complaint, which is the only reason why I could not give this book a 5 stars, but I did find the middle portion of the novel to feel a tad long due to it being more monotonous and repeating give like certain scenarios and ideas. And so if it was shaved by like 50 pages or so, I really think the book could have been extremely solid and felt more cohesive to me personally. Of course, I'm not the author. Despite that though, I really enjoyed this. Definitely Jones's more like laborious work, but I think worth the effort to read. And I gave it 4 stars overall. So let's summarize my overall thoughts for the books that I've read. The first of which was definitely my favorite. They were all equal in like talent and enjoyability, but I think in regards to the vibe of the book, which is often why I rate things higher than others, this was my favorite and I gave it a 4.5 stars. Then probably the most fun book of them all, My Heart is a Chainsaw, which I gave 4 stars. And then of course, The Buffalo Hunter Hunter as the most like well-written and intense book, which I also gave 4 stars. So all in all, I definitely think this is my most successful vlog. I absolutely loved every single thing that I read, and I definitely think Stephen Graham Jones is an auto-buy author for me from here on out. Please let me know down below if you've read any of these books. Did you like them? Did you hate them? Do you also think Stephen Graham Jones is brilliant? Let me know. And if you would like to follow my reading journey, I always leave a link down below to my Twitter, Goodreads, and Instagram. Of course, reluctantly, because we are all victims of capitalism. And in order to succeed socially in today's day and age, we need social media. So if they're still there, they will be there down below. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, and ring the notification bell. It does wonders for my channel, makes me feel really good. And that's it. I never know how to end these things, so I will see you next time, okay? Bye!